I'm Susan Donna Fortin, class of 1992, and I want to welcome you to the WEph Our Family, Mothers and Daughters of Williams panel. And just a quick reminder before we start, immediately following the session, we're going to convene on the front steps of the 62 Center for a group photograph to commemorate this historic event, so please do not miss. As an alumna with a daughter in the class of 2026, I've had time this year to reflect on similarities and differences between my own and her experience 34 years later. So I'm very excited for this panel to share their own reflections on the intergenerational experience at Williams. And as a member of the We Lead Advisory Board, I'm very honored to introduce this panel. As I know you've heard once or twice today, We Lead is our women's philanthropy initiative. We're working to close an important gender gap in giving at Williams, which is the number of alumni fund leadership gifts at the leadership level of 2,500 or more. So if you haven't had a chance yet this weekend, I encourage you to speak with me or another advisory board member, or if you like, you can scan the QR code on the bookmark to learn more. And I hope you will learn more about how women can help lead Williams into its next chapter of possibilities. So now, please join me to welcome our mothers and daughters speakers. We have Minette McDermott, class of 79, and with daughters Ren Raudio, class of 07, and Ricky Koo Swindler, class of 09. And we have Paula Tuffin, class of 1985, and her daughter Sarah Hollinger, class of 2019. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So, unlike the other panels possibly you've experienced today, this one is going to be extremely interactive. So hopefully you'll have all your questions ready. And to get us started, we were just going to tell you a little bit about who we are, what we do, and what brought us to Williams, and then we'll take it from there. So, Minette?
Thank you. Oh my goodness. It's so great to be here, and I'm so grateful that you all came to listen to us. I am so happy to see my friends here and to have met some new ones. It's so beautiful. I am an introvert. No, but this is true. I'm an introvert. I made it through Williams without actually speaking in class, believe it or not. And my father always raised me, it's better to listen than to talk, and I really took it literally. So I made it through Williams. It's unbelievable. But I've learned so much from all of you and listening to your stories, and that's how I gained my knowledge at Williams. It was a beautiful one. And I am so grateful because as an introvert, I was more comfortable being with children than with adults. So I had the very wonderful privilege of being able to raise my 4 children. But in my education, I decided to study how language works in the mind, and I went on to study linguistics for a graduate study. But now I'm studying how language works in the gut. So that's what inspired me to start my own company at this crazy age. I am now 66, running a company that is growing happily, and it's all about the microbiome. So I started a company that is looking at how microorganisms that reside in our gut are the foundation of all health. And as I started to grow this company, it became this duo mission where we are trying our best to be in alignment with the environment and making sure that whatever we do is going to be for the health of the environment as well, and how the health of the gut and the health of the environment are so interrelated. So I'm really happy to be here. What brought me to Williams is just pure luck. I just happened to move as a junior from St. Louis, Missouri to New York, and the counselor said, "What school do you want to go to?" And I said, "Well, I like small and I like the country." And he said, "Well, I got the perfect place for you, Williams." So that's how I got here. Thank you. And they were very good to me, so good to me.
Well, it's so interesting you talk about fathers, because my father definitely figures into the reason that I ended up at Williams, because I hadn't heard of it growing up in the suburban Midwest. And, after you take the, PSAT, there were all those mailings that came to your house from various schools. And I was getting things from all sorts of schools I'd never heard of before. And my dad just happened to be standing next to me when I picked up the curriculum guide from Williams that they had sent in the mail, because it was snail mail, it was a really long time ago. And I said, "Williams, what's that?" with kind of a sneer on my face. And my father kind of said, "Williams, that's a great bastion of learning." And which is how my dad talked, Sarah. Yeah. And I thought, "Oh, what's that?" And so then, of course, did the research and found out, about the school and thought, wow, this would be a perfect place, because I was looking for small as well. I definitely was an introvert also. And I think had I not taken Russian classes, I would have made it through without talking in class if I could have avoided it. But so at Williams, I ended up meeting my husband, who's Sarah's dad. So she's a double legacy, but left Williams, went straight to law school, which is, I think, a more typical kind of Williams path, but then had a very atypical career that has included, being a federal prosecutor in the Southern District of New York, then also starting a high school in New York City, and working for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau as an enforcement attorney when it first came open. So it's always been starting things. And interestingly enough, I landed for the past 7 years at a startup. I'm the general counsel of an online mortgage company that has, had some very interesting experiences over the last 7 years. So I feel like my time at Williams and the focus on, critical thinking and, just pulling together disparate facts and figuring out what the best path is has been completely helpful and is the reason that I can do my crazy job. And that's what led me here.
I have been coming to Williamstown since I was little, since we're double legacies as well, since Manette met Brian on their first day moving in, and Manette offered to help Brian with his luggage, and then the rest wrote itself. I'm the oldest of the four, so we were trying to remember when the first reunion was that we attended, but I had very fond memories of the Purple Valley, but didn't want to go here, didn't want to do the same thing as both my parents, and on paper wanted to go to Amherst, probably to do a little spite, in spite of you went to Williams, I want to do my own thing. But then when we went to visit, I did not like it. We came here and it just felt like home again. And I think it helped knowing that I would have a very different path from both my parents. I was going to make it my own. The last time I was on this stage is very special to me because I directed a show my senior year. I directed Into the Woods here, filled with lots of lovely memories, which just came back on Broadway, and that was lovely. So I had a very different path from both my parents. I did Frosh Review, I directed and was in a lot of theater. I was a JA while here and JA co-president. I also was we were the last JA class to be what a lot of you probably were for freshman entries. As a lot of you know now, Mission is for freshmen, so that was right after I was JA, and I was co-president to help kind of move that over at that time. The next class of JAs moved to Mission, no more Odd Quad and Lehman and Morgan. So definitely a very different experience from my parents. So I'm very happy I came here. And then after Williams' senior year, a lot of friends knew exactly what they wanted to do, and I was floundering a little bit. I was like, I don't know what I want to do. And I guess because I had a lot of leadership experience here, Teach for America reached out to me and said, you should apply, and I did. And I was like, oh, this kind of combines tons of things I like. Teaching is kind of performative and improvising and never being bored and being around kids, which I love. So I did Teach for America in the South Bronx, and now I think it's 15 years still teaching in the New York City DOE, teach third grade in Williamsburg. and I love it. I teach in an ICT setting. I'm the special educator. ICT, if you don't know, very quickly, it's 60% kids, general ed kids, and 40% individualized education plans. They're learning alongside each other, learning from each other, learning about inclusion, and the students who are general ed are like model students. They can teach the other kids. I think it's the best way to learn, and I love it. So that's my path, and turn over to Ricky.
Hi, I'm Ricky. I guess I should start by asking, because we wanted to make this interactive, how many legacies do we have in the audience? Woo! Quite a few. Amazing. Yes, and mothers of current students? Or past. Love it.
Mothers of legacy.
Yes. So I think, just to Ren's point, I too was very resistant to coming here after having spent so much time around Williams and wanting to pave my own path. But the truth is, I grew up in a very close family, a very, very connected group. And I found the same thing at Williams. I did a recruit trip for volleyball. One of my teammates' mothers is here, which is pretty cool. But I just instantly felt that same community and connection here that I had in high school and with my own family. And it's a magnet that's really hard to not get pulled into. So I found myself here and similarly made a commitment to myself to try to pave my own path at Williams. Since then, I've had a pretty wavy path in my career, no straight lines at all. Started in Thailand teaching, ended up doing digital marketing for ESPN for 7 years in New York City. And now I have ended up running sales and marketing and branding for a restaurant company in California called Mendocino Farms. So we do better for you, fast casual salads and sandwiches. And the crazy thing, kind of I guess the full circle, is that we are repped by a blue cow. So this is Mendo, the blue cow. So in a very weird turn of events, went from the purple cow to the blue cow. It's probably the only two colored cows in the world. But yeah, so that is my path to where I am today.
Hi, everyone. So similarly, no surprise, I also didn't want to go to Williams as a child. But I do remember having such fond memories as a kid going up to Williams over fall weekends, seeing all of the varsity sports teams play, going to the football games. I just remember always feeling at home, as you guys said, when I came up here. But, you know, when you're deciding where to go to college, you do have that rebellious phase internally. So I was definitely looking around at different options. But I was a soccer player. I knew I wanted to play soccer in college, so it ended up that I was able to go to a recruiting event at Williams. And in a similar theme, when it became clear that I was going to be able to kind of forge my own experience at a place like this or at Williams, I definitely just saw kind of the vision, and it made a lot of sense. And so that's what ultimately, you know, helped me come to the decision to go to Williams. And I still kind of treasure the relationships that I was able to forge over my time there. Since then, I don't have as much of a career on the other side of it, but I've been at the same company. I currently work as a trading associate on an investor desk in New York.
Sarah's leaving out that she was captain of the women's soccer team in one of the 3 national championships that they got when she was here. Had to add that in, sorry.
And I'm happy to say that Ricky was also the captain of the volleyball team that did well at NASDAQ. So.
And I have to say, I don't think my mom's an introvert, because as soon as we pulled in to the parking garage last night, she found someone and was like screaming excited, and Ricky and I were both like, get out, let's get out, like leave mom to do her thing. Like, this is her element. Like, she loves, I guess it's an introvert in a different way than I think of it, but I don't know, sure. She's an introvert.
Oh,
yes.
My goodness. One of the things that I remember about Williams was that I was on financial aid, and as an introvert, it actually worked well for me. Because I got to work in the library, which I loved. I got to work behind in the dining room washing dishes, and I also got to work the switchboard, believe it or not, then we had a switchboard, and we had these old-fashioned phones in all the rooms. So families would call in and ask for a person. I would look it up in a
Directory.
book, a directory, and it would say what dorm, what room, and I would plug it in and connect people to the family. And it was crazy because people look at me and they say, seriously, are you joking? Like in I Love Lucy? I said, yeah, it was like I Love Lucy. I actually plugged people in, and it was kind of rewarding. It's like, got to learn how to talk.
Well, that's what's so interesting, too, about the things that are different from our experiences on campus and our children's experiences, because I remember the first year at Williams, they still had maid service. So people actually came and cleaned our rooms and our bathrooms. Now, that ended after my freshman year, but that was definitely something that I don't think was happening when you were on campus.
We needed that. We did not have it.
And I was asking you, I was like, I didn't even think about this because you were a JA and some of your frosh. You did not have co-ed entries at that point in time. And what about you, Paula? Were you in?
We had co-ed entries, but I was in Morgan, so my first year, Morgan Mideast. And we had, it was alternating boy, girl on the floors.
But that was same with when we were, alternating. But when I'm wondering when it changed, so from 79 to 85, right? So there's some time in there it became someone.
The first co-ed entries, because I was a JA in co-ed entry, so it would have been 79, 80. That's when I was a junior. Yes. And that was my JA. But we had two. I was in Sage C. I think there were only two. Co-ed entries.
Oh, so they kind of like, yeah, that's very cool. A transition it in, and people could choose.
Well, from 81 to 85, Morgan was completely co-ed, all of the entries there. I think the freshman quad was, I think they had some single-sex entries.
Very cool. Oh, I guess, yes, Ellen.
Ellen, I'm one of my first friends at Williams, and we were in the show. We were famously remembering that Annette hosted us in her home for spring break freshman year. Thank you. Us in this road, actually several others too, which is saying something. But a question for the mom. We heard from the daughters what you found about Williams when you were going to high school. For the mom, what did you think about your daughters going or not going to Williams when they were thinking about college and going to high school?
Well, going back to when Sarah was I have a picture of Sarah in a Williams bib with a purple cow on it when she's like 1. So I think her dad and I always hoped that she would, just because we had just a good experience here, and thought it set us up well for our careers, and just was a great place to actually be with people who were really interested in the idea and had true curiosity. And that sort of distinguishes Williams, I think, from my graduate school experience, which felt more like a trade school, whereas here people seem to be learning just for learning's sake, which is something that we hope our kids would take advantage of. So it was, but we tried our best to, when they were little, of course, we pushed Williams on them, but then when it got time to actually think about school, then as a parent, you want the child to go to the school that's right for them. And so you have to kind of step back. And so I actually even took Sarah up to Amherst when she was looking in, tried not to say anything from the sidelines. And we would have lived through that had you made that choice. But I think it's great from my perspective to feel like she continued that legacy. And then when I think about the happenstance that sort of led me here, I just happened to be standing next to my dad at that moment when he made that comment. And then when Sarah was here, her junior year, she got to be on the selection committee, the board that selected the next president, who was Maud. And, Maud, having come here and actually affected how financial aid is distributed, makes a huge difference. And for her dad and I, who were on financial aid when we were here, that is extraordinarily meaningful. And you think, what would that mean to my father? That he, his grandchild actually had an impact on this institution that he actually thought very highly of. So I'm thrilled that she made that choice.
Wow, and I loved hosting all of you. It was really amazing. I do believe that this is a family. It's incredible. And I remember when Ren was a little girl, learning at school that how babies were made, and she came home and asked, you mean you did it 4 times? And I said, but she also then asked, does that mean I go to college and I meet my husband? And it was just so sweet and innocent, and there was no ever encouraging them to go to Williams, but they could see that we felt that it was family, and I think they experienced the comfort of family as well whenever we would visit. But I do remember when it came to taking her around to visit the colleges, she wanted to do it with her best friend. So her best friend's mother and I would drive around, and we went to 21 different schools. And her best friend came out saying, I want to go big, I want to go city, and I want to go Ivy. And Ren came back saying, I want little, I want no Ivy, and I want to be in the country. Because I know that I'm never ever going to live there. I'm probably going to live in the city. And I thought,
No, because I was going to be distracted by a city.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yes.
That's true. Distracted by the city, exactly. And so one of the cool things that I remember very clearly was Ren coming into my room in tears after deliberating whether or not to choose Williams. And she said, it's really amazing, but I really want to go to Williams. And I was like, well, why are you crying? And she goes, because I want my school. I want it to be my school. I said, it can be your school too. It's just because we went there doesn't mean it's not your school. And so she really did, make it her own place and did a completely different path. And yes, she is the extrovert, and I am the introvert.
I don't think I am an extrovert.
Okay.
It takes a lot of effort to I was saying last night, I have to mentally prepare myself to be in situations like this, and I feel exhausted afterwards. And my job, I'm on all day, with kids, but they're kids, and there's something so wonderful about that, the innocence and the impressions that I leave with them, and the way I make them feel, and the way they make me feel. That's I feel very much at home there too. And today, before I came here, I had to be with my own kids. I have 3 kids, and they're here, and I had to get, I had to soak them in to have the energy to be here, because it was just I couldn't go the whole day without seeing my own kids. So, but I don't think I'm an extrovert. I think I perform it. That's what I do. It's I'm not an extrovert. I think you are, but we can talk about that at home.
In your DNA, and you had an awareness of it. What surprised you in a good or bad way?
I can start. I think what was surprising to me, and if anyone was in the athletes panel just now, this kind of came up, but I love that I was able to spend so much time doing something that was very important to me at Williams, and I think it was a really rewarding experience, but it definitely was a little bit more narrow than I remember my parents describing the kind of social fabric of the school. My mom would always talk about how her friend group was just comprised of all these people who had different passions, were always kind of spending their time in different ways. And I think when I came here, and I think it was, as I said, amazing in so many ways, but I did feel I was spending a lot of time kind of in a similar sphere for the majority of my experience. And so, it worked out that we had a lot of success and it was great, but I think at the same time, I wanted to have a little bit more of a diverse experience over my time.
And that actually was surprising to me as well, the experience that she had. When I was there, so much of the social life revolved around our entry and where you went to live in senior housing. So it started out in Morgan, Mideast, And I think that first semester, the entire 15 people moved as a clump. Like we, had meals together, we did all sorts of things together. And at that point, I think they were doing a little social engineering in terms of how they were populating the different entries. So my particular entry was from people from suburban public high schools. And so it was sort of interesting to have people that had that type of similar experience together, whereas the freshman quad was boarding school people. And my husband's entry, which was Morgan Midwest, which is right next door, he always said, I think that was comprised of the people that they thought weren't quite going to make it. So, but it created a different kind of experience. And then, the social life was centered around your house afterwards, and that seemed very different to what Sarah's experience was. But I also could, because the sports weren't as good, I got to play ice hockey and be a coxswain on crew. So, I felt like I did get to have a more diverse experience than with, competitive varsity sports now. You couldn't be a walk-on in the same way.
Yeah, I definitely was surprised about that. I got to walk onto the crew team, and I was also a coxswain. I got to walk on the volleyball team and the track team, and yeah, it was an amazing experience. And I guess I would say I was surprised at how friendly everybody was. And I think that's where I learned that it was okay. I did learn how to talk with my friends. Because believe it or not, I made it through high school barely talking to friends because books became my best friends. But I did learn from my friends by observing them that friendships mean a lot. And as I experienced the friendliness of people, because we didn't have very many Asians and I really only knew how to connect with Asians, I befriended the Black Student Union, and I got to be very much a part of that community. And it was during a time when there was a little bit of, that's the table where the black people sit, and that's the table where everyone else sits. So I was kind of in between, trying to figure out and navigate where I was supposed to be, but it wasn't anything that anyone did to me. It was much more what was happening in my head and where I felt comfortable, who I could relate to, and who I thought understood me better.
I would say that I was very surprised at, I created this image of Williams in my mind of very studious people who spend 90% of their day in the library outside of meals, and I was really pleasantly surprised how well-rounded Williams was and how much it advocated for kind of a holistic experience. I think, at least in my experience while I was here, such work hard, play hard people were who I mostly got to experience, interact with, and I think ultimately, and having heard a lot of the speakers this weekend, a lot of that, I think, contributes to seeing Williams grads go out and doing amazing things in the world that are not just academic. I mean, some obviously are immensely academic in nature, but I was amazed at how much of a network was created just through the social aspect of Williams, and how a lot of people from different backgrounds and different passions could be sources of learning, not just the books. I think that I take so much away from that from Williams and reflect on that a lot.
I was surprised, I guess, I mean, just like how not homesick I was, because like going into it, I was the first to leave. I was oldest and first to go to college, and from California to here, and I was like, I'm gonna be so homesick. And then I was like, I think it was 2 weeks before I called you, and you were like, I've been waiting by the phone.
Actually, on that note, I remember my mom came into my bedroom one night when I was studying, and she cuddled up and she said, I'm trying not to take it personally, but I haven't heard from your sister in weeks.
Like I did, yeah, I mean, we had a really awesome entry, and it was just like, we gelled all immediately, and it felt like home very quickly, and I was surprised by that.
When I finally heard from her, she said, what? It's been 2 weeks. I'm so sorry.
But it was interesting too having Ricky there. So we're 2 years apart, and so I was JA when she was a freshman, and that was also really special. I feel like our family, it's a different kind of deep family too. And one of her volleyball friends is in the entry next door to mine, and so we just like saw each other a lot, but we also had really different experiences. We tried to take a Chinese class together, her freshman year, my junior year. That ended horribly. The first day, we were like going around doing pronunciations of different tones, and she would not stop laughing at me. Like every time I would make my pronunciation, and after class, I was like, Ricky, is this gonna continue the whole semester? And she looked at me, she goes, I think it is. And I was like, okay, then I'm dropping it. Chinese can be yours. It's over. So we're not gonna take classes together. We can exist on the same campus doing our own things and seeing each other, but no classes together. I actually have a question for the moms. So thinking about, you brought up a little bit of race, and I'm thinking about, I know your experience during COVID, and you did experience Asian hate, and like what, as Black and Asian women in Williams, did you ever feel unsafe or ever feel discriminated against or marginalized while you were here?
I never felt left out, but a lot of it was in my head. You know, a lot of my discomfort came from being in such a minority. And so there was this built-in mantra that my dad was always telling me, you know, it's better to listen than to talk. And then I'd ask him, well, why? And he said, because if you say something, it could be wrong. and so in my head, I'm thinking, oh, everybody's judging me. Everybody's thinking everything I say could be wrong. And I didn't want to be wrong. And so the experience of being in that much of a minority was a very special one, because even though I grew up in communities where there were not a lot of Asians, I think being in a community where I knew they selected me to be with all of you made it even more profound, if that makes more sense. I don't know. But I felt like I was in a community where there was some intention to try to bring a little diversity into this community, but I was discovering that people were actually nice, as opposed to my high school experience where people were actually mean. So I moved as a junior to a very elite high school to finish my high school career, and literally no one would talk to me. So that's why I say, you know, my high school experience of being around a lot of Caucasians who would not talk to me and literally would say, oh, look, she's wearing the same pair of pants every day. I'm standing there and I'm going, yeah, I am, because I don't have another pair of pants. So it was one of those experiences that humbled me to the point where I came to Williams hoping that I would have a different experience, and lo and behold, I did, because people were actually nice. Yeah.
Yeah, so the year before I started freshman year at Williams, there was a cross burning in Williamstown on campus, and it was, you know, covered in Time magazine. So I saw it. So it was an affirmative decision to come to this place in the way that, well, you know, I think we as African American people of color should be everywhere. And so that was kind of how I approached it. It's like whether or not it was going to be an inviting place or not, it was a place that, you know, as my dad said, was a great bastion of learning. And so I figured I'm entitled to that too. So that was kind of the mindset that I had here. So, and on campus, there was nothing overt that I, you know, personally experienced, but there are always sort of weird side-eye things. Mm-hmm. So, you know, if you take the AP courses, so I got a 5 in my English AP, which meant that you know, could test out of freshman English, and I wanted to take Shakespeare. And so my faculty advisor, I guess the scores were late getting to the school or something, and so my freshman advisor was saying, no, you should take Novel 101, or what the intro class was, and I was like, but no, I don't want to, and I don't have to. And he said, and then he told me one time, because I was not letting this point drop, and he said, well, the scores came back and you got a 4. And I was like, that's completely not true. And so, and ultimately, of course, the scores came and it was a 5, and so I got to take Shakespeare. In retrospect, I probably should have taken Intro 101, but that's beside the point. The fact that he felt comfortable lying to me about something that I had said was, I think that's a destabilizing thing. But coming to the place knowing that this wasn't a place that was built for me, but I was going to, take from it what I could, made that not sort of break me or make me feel like, oh, I really don't belong here. So, and so you're right, it's like this, you sort of develop this skin that allows those things that ultimately don't really matter, sort of roll off so that you can achieve what you want. And the same thing, so I'm still extremely close with my freshman year roommates and texted them all this morning to say that, we were back here. And also during that first year, as I said, I met my husband day 1 in 5-day-a-week Russian class. And so we became in the same friend group. And so that supportive friend group lasted throughout the whole time. And that's what, that's why this place is special, because it felt like there was room for us, even though we weren't the traditional students. And then over the course of time, as I said, Sarah now got to help pick a lot. So it's just great to feel a part of the Purple Horde.
It is great to come back to the campus and see all these young people. So the cool thing about this company that I've started, we've been able to hire winter interns from Williams, summer interns from Williams, and it's been the growing of this beautiful Williams family. So I just, before coming to session, was with the summer interns that we hired on Zoom, and I got to meet them for the first time, and they are just incredible individuals. And I mean, more incredible than I thought on Zoom, but in person, they're just so relaxed and confident and excited about the opportunity to work in this startup. It renewed my whole faith in how all of this works, and hearing their story and how they got here was so exciting. And I'm glad that Williams makes it possible for us to keep it going and to keep the energy of the love of learning to continue in your job. Yeah, so it was so cool. Yeah.
It is the best secret. So I've hired no less than 5 Williams grads at my job, and they all done extraordinarily well. Yeah. So they keep producing great products.
Yes, this is true. This is true.
First of all, we just spent the week with my daughter Emily, who was Ricky's teammate, and so we were asking her. We were just reflecting on 50 years. I mean, for us, we remember so clearly the 10-year celebration and being not the pioneers, but just behind the pioneers here, and feeling very much part of that wave of women being part of schools that weren't designed for us and weren't available until, I didn't even consider it. And I mean, we grew up thinking we did not have this option. So it was profound. So how does it feel? Just reflect on how you guys feel. I guess now you've asked us moms questions, which is very kind. But how do you feel about 50 years? Is it, and I was asking Emily that this week, and without the benefit of recent reunions with COVID, and having been able to come back a bunch of years like we have, Coming back now with multi-generations, I'm just curious what 50 years means to all of you who, for whom Williams is very much now for you. I don't know, it just feels different, feels really special, and it's really special for us to spend time with all of you from much younger classes. So I'm just curious from your perspective what the 50 years means.
It feels very powerful. I mean, I'm always amazed by the connectivity and energy that you feel when you come back to Williams, and I think especially being in the presence of some of the incredible women that are here today, it's powerful, and it also makes you feel a obligation or a responsibility to think about the future of this place, but also what we all should be doing to contribute to society. I feel very inspired by hearing the stories of other people and what they're out there doing, and I think that's the connective tissue every time I come back here, is this renewed sense of just wanting to do more, and I think that's part of the power of Williams. So both power and responsibility, as corny as that is. It sounds like a Marvel film, but a little bit of that.
Yeah, I would say I feel a lot of gratitude, and I think it also, it helps give context for, I think sometimes in the moment, as I think about my 4 years at Williams, it can be easy to see what can be made better about a social situation, how you can make things more inclusive, how we can continue to forge a path that's better. But I can truly say, hearing my mom talk about her experience, I've never once felt like Williams was never meant for me. And I think that's a pretty profound statement, that I kind of always felt like I had a place at this campus and that I belonged there. I think obviously I was, other aspects socially that maybe, could have been more inclusive, what have you, but I just think even saying that's incredible to be able to say. And so it makes me feel, again, a responsibility for thinking for the next 50 years, how our action and decision making is going to make, it even more inclusive and a more, better place for other people. So I feel a lot of gratitude.
Yeah, I think 50 years, thinking about who built this college, and also then thinking about, I'm like wading through this in my mind, how I want to say it, but, last night, the first thing that came on, if you are in the main stage last night listening to Kristen, with the acknowledging the land that we're on, and going back in history and whose land this was first, and thinking about, yes, this has, these past 50 years, women have been allowed, but also acknowledging the history that women weren't allowed, and then before that, Black men weren't allowed, and also just thinking about the history and talking about it, and with our children or with anyone who is looking into Williams, and just the whole history. And I think that this is a conversation I have as a teacher with my students too, and thinking about who made the rules of this country, right? And I come back to that a lot, like white men who took land from the people who are here, the ones who made the rules. And so, like, what are the things that we're doing? How do we fight for the future and bring that, knowing that, what are the things that we're doing to change the rules or the laws and the things that we have come to know that are maybe unfair to groups of people. Like, it is still, 50 years is a long time and is a short time. And for kids, it's like, what? That's forever. Like, they look at me and they're like, you must be 80 because you're so tall. But like 50 years is short and it's long. And so,
we were actually even saying at lunch, I mean, this is the first generation that we have mothers and daughters graduating from Williams. We haven't even seen yet, to my knowledge, I don't think there's been a granddaughter who's graduated yet from that first 50 years of women. So that makes it, just puts in perspective how young that really is, but how much, I mean, we will see growth-wise in the next many decades, but it is.
And
We're
just
young.
not getting comfortable, like continue to talk about it, like continue to share the stories of like how it was before and like why that was wrong and how special it is, but also how there are still people who probably don't feel like this is a space for them, and there will be until, as a society, as a culture, we make a lot of changes that have been put in this country, you know, since it was born. So I think just acknowledging that, I think, is important. As that's, for me personally, is like the work I'm doing as a teacher, so I just had to say it for the few minds that are here.
Yeah, and that's the most compelling thing, because it's, you know, to steal from our President Barack Obama, it's like we're always working to perfect the ideas of the past and like pulling the things that actually can work and getting rid of the things that actually don't and are horrifying. But it's the inclusiveness of the conversation and really not shying away from those things that are distasteful, but just accepting them as part of the history of this place, I think makes, you know, gives hope that maybe things can change moving forward.
I have one more question, unless anyone else does. Okay.
Is it, what's your favorite snack?
No. Okay, so in all of the sessions, I think a question I kept hearing was, what about your Williams experience or education prepared you for X career, right? And I'm really curious, being in my childbearing years and having a child myself now, what do you think about Williams prepared you most to be a parent? What are the things here that you used regularly throughout not just your career, but your parenting years?
Well, this is completely corny, but, you know, climb high, climb far. I say that a lot. I've said that a lot historically to them, because just the idea of it, you know, we have these goals, but you've got to aim farther than that. Just think beyond the next corner. So I'm sure she has no recollection of me ever saying that.
I remember it. We had a photo of it in our,
Yes.
or a painting of
Yes.
the gate in our
Yeah.
in our house. So
Yeah, but just that mindset of, you know, you can really do anything, I think, is part of what we try to explain to them.
Yeah, I love that question, Ricky. I think my Williams education taught me to be open and curious. And when I'm with children, that's what I love about them. They're just so open and curious. And when I allow my heart to be open and curious, that's when I begin to hear exactly what it is I'm supposed to be doing in this world. And that gives me the purpose and reason for what I'm doing now. Because learning from the young people, especially these young people who are here at Williams now and then, when I see their ability to share what is currently now available to them in terms of technology, in terms of access to data, I am so astounded at their willingness to, and patience, to spend time with me, who's this, you know, 66-year-old trying to start a company and barely knows how to turn on a television. They are so willing to sit and like, okay, Instagram, you want to make sure that you do, you know, it's amazing. And they want to, they actually want to share that information with me, which is just beautiful, because as I'm sharing with them what I'm learning from the research that I'm doing to start this company, they are helping me build something that I hope is going to survive in this ever-changing, technology-driven world. And without them, I never would have been able to do it. And just to address my daughters, I want to thank them for being such an inspiration to me, because education is a huge part of my mission-driven company, and food is the secret, because without the food of a healthy gut, we're not going to survive, because it's so interrelated to the environment and our going back to what nature had intended, and that is to heal all of us through healthy food. And so it's really cool that I can sit here next to my daughters and know that they were the ones that, in their quiet way, inspired me to learn about what I wanted to do in life past raising 4 children. So I'm very honored and excited that I get to be with you here and that you're here with me today sharing. Really, it's truly special. Thank you.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank
you,
you.
mothers and daughters. 2 reminders. Am I screaming? I can't even tell. Okay. The group photo is going to be out. I think it's going to be in the lobby now because of the weather outside. So just kind of hang around and we'll direct you. Also, if you could, please be sure to fill out your reflection cards that are in the packets, and just, you can hand them to anyone with the staff sticker on their name tag, or just put them on one of the tables. Thank you so much, you guys. Thanks.